Welcome to Make Peace with Food. I'm your host, Emily LaVoie, a certified eating psychology coach. I own a virtual private practice, and I work with clients all over the world, one-on-one and in group programs, to help heal their relationship with food and improve body image. Here at Make Peace with Food, we believe food is not your enemy, that eating should be fun and bring you joy and pleasure, not stress and guilt. To keep this a safe space, I will try my best to avoid mentioning numbers like calories and weight, as well as other potentially triggering content, but you know yourself best, so please avoid any episode topics that may not feel helpful to where you're at in your healing journey. This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. It's not a replacement for medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor does it provide a client or patient relationship. Consult your own provider on any changes you're thinking about making. Today's episode is brought to you by my one-on-one coaching. If you're curious about becoming a client and want to learn more about what it looks and feels like to receive support in healing your relationship with food and improving your body image, go to my website, emily-lavoie.com, to schedule a free 30-minute Zoom consultation. Welcome to episode 5. I hope you're doing great today. And in today's episode, we are actually going to talk about normal eating. Ironically, I know the majority of people in our culture or in our society, also known as diet culture, because we live and breathe diet culture all the time. We don't even realize how much it shows up and conditions the way we think or brainwashes us. A lot of people have a pretty large misconception about what quote unquote normal eating should be or should look and feel like. So diet culture's version of normal eating is substantially and significantly different than what true normal eating is. Meaning that if a person has a positive or healthy relationship with food, what their normal eating looks and feels like is going to be way different than a person who is dieting or following strict, restrictive, rigid food rules. A lot of times when people are following these rules, they think they're doing quote unquote good and they think they're eating normally, but it's actually maybe borderline. They're eating in a disordered way. So they maybe don't have a full-blown eating disorder, but they have some disordered eating thoughts and behaviors coming up. So in today's episode, we're talking about normal eating. And I'm going to read kind of a little blurb. It's probably several sentences long, about a paragraph. And I can't take credit for it. I did not write it. A woman named Ellen Satter wrote it, and I will link to her website in the show notes. She has the Ellen Satter Institute, and she kind of does what I do, but she deals way more with child eating and feeding children. She has come up with something called the division of responsibility. So what responsibilities in the food and eating process are the parents versus what responsibilities are the children's. So if that's something that you feel like you could benefit from, head over to her website. Show notes can be found on my website. So as I read this little blurb by Ellen Satter about what is normal eating, I want you to think about which sentence you really needed to hear. So I read this with literally every single one of my clients. Often we read it several times throughout our work together. I honestly could probably recite it from memory. I've read it so many times I haven't memorized. And even though I've read it 1,000 times, every single time I read it, I'm still like, ooh, that was the sentence I needed to hear today. That was the reminder I needed. That was something I was struggling with. So as I read it, kind of think about what sentence or sentences you maybe really needed to hear that are a good reminder of areas you still need to work on with your relationship with food, or challenges that might still be coming up in your relationship with food, or thoughts that are maybe unhealthy or disordered, or pressures that you're putting on yourself. So anyway, what is normal eating? Normal eating is going to the table hungry and eating until you're satisfied. It's being able to choose the food you like and eat it and truly get enough of it, not just stop eating because you think you should. Normal eating is being able to give some thought to your food selection so that you get nutritious food, but not being so weary and restrictive that you miss out on enjoyable food. Normal eating is giving yourself permission to eat sometimes because you're happy, sad, or bored, or just because it feels good. Normal eating is 3 meals a day, or 4, or 5, or it can be choosing to munch along the way. It's leaving some cookies on the plate because you know you can have some more again tomorrow, or it's eating more cookies now because they taste so wonderful. Normal eating is overeating at times, feeling stuffed and uncomfortable. And it can be undereating at times, wishing you had more. Normal eating is trusting your body to make up for your mistakes in eating. Normal eating takes up some of your time and attention, but it keeps its place as only one important area in your life. In short, normal eating is flexible. It varies in response to your hunger, your schedule, your proximity to food, and your feelings. So I'm assuming that there was a sentence or maybe a few sentences that kind of hit you like a brick wall, meaning, oh, wow, that's not the message that I got from diet culture of what normal eating should look and feel like. Or, oh, something a lot of my clients say to me the first time that they read this is, oh my gosh, I am eating normal. What I'm doing really reflects all of that. And I thought I wasn't eating normal because I wasn't eating according to diet culture's normal, eye roll. And so I think it's just really comforting to know that, oh, normal eating isn't perfect. Normal eating accounts for all of these scenarios that diet culture demonizes, but in all actuality, they're just quite normal. So some of you may have had thoughts along those lines. And interestingly enough, if you continue listening to the podcast, I will be sharing information, sharing tools for you to use that actually apply to every single one of those sentences, meaning I completely understand why Ellen Satter, the person who originally wrote that, why she put every single one of those sentences in there. So as you continue listening to the podcast, you will gain tools and knowledge to support you in being able to eat normally according to what normal eating truly looks and feels like. And so, yeah, as we go, you'll gain more knowledge, you'll gain more info to put into practice. That applies to every individual one of those sentences, and you will receive a tool in order to support yourself in making each of those sentences play out in real life in a positive and supportive way. When we are able to eat a meal or a snack that's more balanced, than balanced translating to like macronutrient balance. So maybe it contains a source of protein, a source of carbohydrate, a source of dietary fat. We know that when a meal is balanced, it's meeting our needs as a human. Like we need carbohydrates, we need protein, we need dietary fat. Each of those individual things serves like a specific purpose in our body to meet its needs. And ironically, when our meals contain those three things, they're very satisfying and very filling. So like there will be a whole episode on like all of the different things that contribute to satisfaction. And that's one of, I think of like a bicycle wheel, like that's one of the spokes. And typically when our meals are pretty balanced, they're pretty nourishing and contain the vitamins and minerals and nutrients. Also, when they're balanced, they have like the variety of flavors and taste profiles that contributes to satisfaction, but they also give this like really cool mouth feel that leads to satisfaction in humans. And yes, we do want to think of nourishment, but that is something that we think of way farther down the road once we've healed some other things. If we bring that nourishment piece in too early, that doesn't contribute to healing our relationship with food. We kind of have to heal first before we start thinking about nourishment. So we want to eventually create meals and snacks that are nourishing but enjoyable. So they contain a balance of macronutrients, but also a balance of fun foods and play foods, because a lot of times it's the play foods that bring us a little bit more joy and pleasure. So another thing we really think about as we heal our relationship with food and we get to kind of a more peaceful place, we also want to think about, and I give tools, I want to nourish my body. I also want to enjoy food, but I also want to feel good at the end of it. And so that is another thought that goes into the equation when we're making food choices. So I'll give a personal example. I love these gummy bears that are called Albanese. It's in Indiana or something. And I love them. And when I eat them, they do not leave me feeling that good. They just something about, they don't agree with my body. They kind of make me feel just lousy and maybe bloated, they're just sitting in my stomach and not digesting, just sitting like a rock almost. And I'm an adult, I can make adult decisions about my food choices. So I've kind of experimented with, okay, there's kind of an amount that I can eat where I don't feel horribly lousy. I can eat this kind of reasonable amount and it still leaves me feeling decently good. And then sometimes I'm no, I don't want to have to deal with even feeling marginally lousy. I'm just going to avoid them. That's the best decision. Even though I love them, I'm not going to eat them today. And other times I might be you know what? I really want some. I'm craving them so bad. And I'm going to have some, but I'm going to have the amount that I know I can eat and still feel decent. And other times I'm you know what? I'm an adult. I know if I eat these, I'm going to feel pretty bad and I want to eat them and I know what the end result is going to be. It's going to be me feeling not super great and that's okay. I don't have anything that I need to feel super great for. So if I feel pretty lousy, I can deal with it. And just being conscious enough to know how I feel after I eat something and making that informed decision. So I guess I would say that when I choose not to eat them, I'm choosing not to eat them as a form of self-care. I'm not blindly eating them, thinking I can eat them and still feel good. So that's something we bring into the equation. Whichever sentence jumped out to you, I guarantee I will touch on it in the future and give you tools to support yourself in achieving what that challenging sentence might have said and how you can achieve those using those tools in a very positive, kind, supportive, loving, gentle way with yourself. And if you need more help and you don't want to wait for whenever that episode might come out, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. Let's have a conversation. Go to my website, link in the show notes to schedule a free Zoom consultation, and we can get this show on the road a little bit sooner. That's the show. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed it, I'd be so grateful if you take a minute to follow or subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating and review on Apple, Spotify, or whatever podcast platform you're listening on. It helps others to find the podcast and continue spreading this important information to more people who need to hear it. This podcast is made possible by paid supporters at patreon.com/makepeacewithfood. They're truly what keep this show going so that I can pay my assistant, editor, producer, and allow me to keep sharing all of this content and doing this important and needed work with you all. Go to patreon.com/makepeacewithfood to sign up for as little as $3 per month. Make Peace with Food is hosted by me, Emily LaVoie. It's produced and edited by Jake Lamore at Pathfinder. Thank you so much for your support.